Tim, great to be talking to you.
Good to see you again, Joe. Hope you're holding up okay there.
You know what? We are doing okay. Thank you. And I hope you're doing okay. And please extend that to the entire Datto team.
Well, I appreciate the wishes. Everybody's doing well. No real confirmed serious cases that we've been aware of since the beginning of the crisis. I think we had 2 or 3 people that most likely had it, and maybe a confirmed or 2, but just rested in their houses. And that's your first and foremost concern. So all good on that front.
Absolutely, the important stuff. So, well, listen, I know this is a busy time. I know everyone's remote. I really appreciate you, coming forward and sharing some time with me to talk a little bit about the industry, Datto, your partners, et cetera. I got a series of questions. I organized them into maybe categories or chapters, so to speak. I really want to start before the pandemic, or at least before the pandemic began to have an economic impact here in the U.S. Can we rewind a little bit to January and February of 2020, early this year, before things got a little strange? How was the MSP industry performing, and what were your views in terms of how the year was looking ahead of all this happening?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, things were as good as ever, honestly. I mean, they, you look at anything, signups for DattoCon, you look at sales, for Datto, we always say that where goes the MSP industry goes Datto, because we're a partner, and we really like to think of ourselves as technology leaders, but we may be laggards in terms of growth. If the industry doesn't grow, Datto doesn't grow, right? We're in lockstep with the MSP community. It is our business model, and clearly all the trends were very, very positive. It seems like 5 minutes ago, our sales kickoff was in New York City. Everybody was pumped up. January was good. Somebody told me the other day, which I had forgotten, that I had a fever and was sick, for kind of 24 hours at kickoff. And they said, "Do you think coronavirus is already buzzing around New York?" I said, "Well, I don't know, but if there's some immunity involved, maybe I got lucky." But it was just business as usual, I think, and looking forward to a really good year. And certainly didn't see anything in our data, our numbers, our partner conversations, road shows. We're so in touch with the partner base that I think you'd have to say it was a bright year ahead.
All right. So let's fast forward to roughly mid-March. You have the United States declaring a federal emergency. The aha moment for me, I was certainly watching a few IT conferences and also the supply chain get impacted worldwide. But here in the U.S., the aha moment for me was the NBA shutting down, and then everything else sort of almost changing overnight, right?
Yeah.
As all that came down, how closely were you working with the board and sort of strategizing? What was the chatter at the boardroom level in terms of what Datto thought was going on and what might you need to do?
Yeah, so we were lucky to be in an interesting position in a couple dimensions. One is we still build hardware. It's part of our DNA. Austin used to like to say we get our hands dirty. So while we're primarily a software SaaS, kind of subscription business, like most modern tech companies, we do create high performance hardware and networking and continuity. And so we have supply chain. And, we were watching that from January. And there were clearly some disruptions or potential disruptions. So had a whole team looking at this crisis pretty carefully, saw it come over to Seattle. It really hit home when we had to send our Beijing office home. We've got engineers in Beijing. Mm-hmm. So, they were home for some number of weeks. I want to say about 6. And they've come back, and we're actually getting a nice little lens into what reopening looks like. It's been a month probably since they've been back in the office, but not every restaurant's open again. The movie theaters were open for a bit afterwards, and then they were closed. And so there's going to be this kind of series of things. For us at HQ, I can remember went to New York City last week of February, and I remember walking into a CVS, Wayne Reedy, one of these, and buying some toothpaste that I'd forgotten. And I saw this empty shelf, and I said to the guy, "What was there?" And he said, "Hand sanitizer. They're hoarding it." Yeah. Right. So the news cycle is building, and a guy in a pickup truck's coming by and, taking all of his hand sanitizer. And, not more than a week later or so, we were in Norwalk at headquarters and starting to get the, hey, this guy's got a fever. And we actually had our President's Club. So our top sales awards winners, they were down in Mexico. Some guy down there's got a fever. You're thinking, uh-oh, better bring them all home. Turned out, fortunately, he had something else, and we were able to diagnose that, and he's fine. But so I think it was that first 2 weeks of March. At some point, probably on the earlier side, we basically all looked at each other. I just said, let's go home. We knew we could function at home. We've been running trials of functioning at home. And it's not going to be perfect. So the sooner you are home, the better you can operate. If it's going to have problems, you want to know sooner. If it turns out to be a false alarm, okay, you got a little egg on your face. You kind of slink back into the office in a few weeks. But my pattern matching is from previous global crises, and I think I've been through all of them in the last 30 years. And, you act a little bit right out of the gate without the facts, and you try to take, sort of bold action and really conservative, obviously, help employees, help partners, keep people safe. So it was somewhere, I remember the exact day, but it was somewhere in early March. For MSPs, that might have taken a week or two longer. I've kind of said, listen, forgive yourself. You're small businesses. Datto took a week or two longer than Apple and Google. If you're running Apple, it's pretty easy. It's not bold to say, we're going to close our stores for a couple of months. I mean, what do they have? $200 billion of cash or something? So, we're buying the iPhone over the internet. So what's the difference? And I think the bigs all come out, and they're also making political statements. But for the rest of us, we're a kind of a medium-sized business. If you're running a small business, I totally understand why you want to keep the doors open to the absolute 11th hour. That is your livelihood. So there was this transition in March, and I don't think anybody should second guess anybody else about kind of when they got the aha, as you said. And I miss NBA basketball. My son and I like to watch some of those games, and we're now all stuck watching The Last Dance, which is highly relevant for me because I was living in Illinois during the Jordan glory years. But for other people, it's like, who's this guy? Maybe, I don't know. That's all you got on ESPN.
Yeah, you got to eat what they give you, right? So
that's it.
Here's a quick question for you about sort of company size and regionally. So on the one hand, you're not Apple, but on the other hand, you are not a small business. You have scale at this point. You have operations here in North America, EMEA, Australia, Asia. Was it a blanket move where everyone started working from home, or did you decide on a region by region basis? What's been your approach? Yeah,
for us, it was a blanket move other than Beijing, right? They sort of got forced home essentially by the government and the sort of speed of the situation there. But the rest of it was a blanket move. We certainly were starting down the regional. I think we had a suspected case in the UK, fine, sent them home for a day or two, deep cleaned it. But I would say within some number of days, 2, 3, 4 days, you had a couple of functions like engineering saying, well, we could do software development from home. That's all the same. And fine, they might have gone home one day early. But we were just spending too much time in the data, which was bad data, as we know by history now, trying to guess cases spread, what's the R naught factor. We're not epidemiologists. Even the best people there don't quite know yet. So at some point, I had to just sort of make a declaration, we're going home. And, we'll sort it out on the other side. So it was a global move for us over a couple-day period. The limiting factor was just our operations team's ability to get people home, VPNs, right security. Hey, I need a laptop, at our scale of upwards of 1,700 plus people, it just took a couple of days physically. But other than that, it was very straightforward.
Got it. So just to give our viewers sort of a timestamp, we're recording this on April 30th of 2020. Walk me through April. April was the month where everyone really did start hunkering down at home here in the U.S. Did you see dramatic changes in how MSPs were operating, in how they were managing their businesses, how they're interacting with you? What did you see in the market in April?
It's a great question. I think, I did a webinar for MSPs, probably going back about a month ago. And I said, I'll probably regret it, but I'll make some predictions. And I said, the first thing is, I think we all have to focus on stabilizing our business, whatever that means for you, right? Some people are just not prepared to work from home. You have a one bedroom apartment, your kids are in Zoom school, you got the dogs barking away like that. That's a thing, where's everybody going to actually work? How are you going to work? How do you communicate? How do you get paid? So I think there were a couple weeks of that. And for MSPs, it was just this double witching hour or whatever they call it, because you've got your customers calling saying, hey, I just sent my 100 employees home. Can you swing by this weekend to all of their houses and get them all set up with a UCAS?
Yeah.
And you just go, really? Like, I've got 3 people, I've got 4 techs, and by the way, 7 other clients just called me. So I think that was the shock to the system. And then, to add insult to injury, it's, oh yeah, we don't really want to pay you. And MSPs going, well, actually, we were thinking about charging $150 an hour, right? Because you have to get paid for your time, and my time on the weekends in a crisis where my employees are going to be potentially in harm's way. I need to be paid. And so I think there was really a several-week period, call it end last 3 weeks of March, maybe even into April in some regions, where everybody had to adjust to, hey, I want to help my partners, but, and simultaneously, I got to worry about my own business. And so really no different for us. We start getting the early calls from the hospitality industry, there's going to be that kind of aha moment for them, which is, if you're an MSP, it's pretty rare, but if you're an MSP that focuses on restaurants,
right.
All of a sudden, every one of your clients is just shuttered. And so you can have that panic moment. In that webinar, I basically tried to say to people, stabilize your business first. This is just kind of the put your own oxygen mask on. You can't help your customers if you sort of don't know where your employees are and if they're safe and everybody's comfortable. And, if you have one of your employees in financial difficulties, you got to sort of shore up the line. Then you start helping your partners. And I think the instincts are to kind of stay away, give people space. And I think it's the opposite, right? The reason the industry so far has fared better than expected is this is their time to shine. You call your customers more. You might just be talking sports. They miss the Premier League. They miss the, whatever NBA team is on. You might be asking them what are their unique difficulties. Okay, they took their laptops. They're working from home. Let's start talking about August a little bit. When you're back, what can we do? One thing we saw, of course, was immediate restrictions on working on premise. And a lot of gear is on premise. So I think everybody immediately says, oh, the whole world's moving to the cloud next week. You and I know that's not possible. Is this accelerating thinking about the cloud? Yes. Will this accelerate action on the back end of the cloud? Yes, it will. But if it was easy to just push a button and move all your car dealership legacy platforms over to Azure AWS, you would have already pushed the button. Right. If it was definitely going to cost 30% less, you would have already pushed the button. MSPs aren't dumb. They are moving O365 seats. They are moving file sync and share. They're moving what they can move, and this will likely accelerate, that on the back end. So I think we had those kind of things going on. The prediction I made to the MSPs based on previous crises is in the middle of it, when you have that aha moment, at that moment, whatever your thoughts are, it's different for all of us. You're going to kind of have peak uncertainty and sort of peak anxiety, peak downside case forecast, right? That's oh my God, half my business is going to be gone. You have to sort of play through that day by day, daily cadence, customer by customer, right? One call, per another. And I made a prediction by the end of April, we'll understand the shape of this crisis. And that's when you can start setting your real plans in motion. And I stand by that. I think now we all know that it's millions and it's 10 million, tens of millions of people that are affected. We all know that the death rate's not 10%, it's 1% or 0.5%. We can start to scale it and size it relatively. We've seen our first month of business drop, as individual companies, and you can understand your exposure. And now you can start to set, I think, kind of realistic plans, right? Barring some other, this virus mutates and, is 5 times worse in the fall. But I think we now know that most developed nations and states are kind of peaking now. Maybe they're peaking in a week or two. And we start to focus on what reopening and new normal looks like. So
yeah. Some of the conversation in April, the chatter, I consider myself an observer, right, and a listener. And the things I heard during that moment of panic or crisis among the partners, they were all, almost like asking for things, but they didn't even know what to ask for. But they wanted, quote unquote, more from vendors, right? So I guess now that the nervousness has calmed down a little bit in the industry, let's look back on April and that during that panic. I think it is a key question. Just how much should technology companies be doing for their partners, and how much should partners be responsible on their own? I mean, have you given thought to that in terms of just how much you can help the partner base and where you can't?
Absolutely. I mean, you've met our founder. You know how big his soft spot is for partners. That's translated into the whole company. We call it partners. We call it community. We don't sell direct. And so you bet, just like a parent, you want to absolutely be there for them. The kind of how much should they do, though, and I stress this in my webinar, really translates into how much can you do. So I think we need to ignore the headlines. I mean, Datto's not the company that's going to come out and say, we're funding MSPs to the tune of this. Those are false headlines. You can, and I'll give you a few examples. You can take these headline numbers that some companies will put out and divide by the number of partners that are customers they have, and you'll find out, it's a few $100s per partner. So, if you're a partner that needs $50,000, you can't get that from a vendor. We're not banks, and I don't think anybody will tell you that. So what you can do is very top levels of service, right? You can absolutely do that. There are opportunities, in the restaurant or travel, or people that you're really seeing their business go to, down 50, 60, 70%. There are opportunities for forbearance. There are opportunities to sort of provide some relief, right? So that the service stays and they can continue to serve their customers. Their time is their time. They have to allocate that. Verizon Mobile is publishing stats that they're up 40 or 50%. Zoom is up like 10x. Nobody's giving that away. You still have to pay your Verizon bill, but the cell service should be incredible. And I believe them when they said they've added thousands of workers and adding towers, adding capacity. And Zoom has actually functioned quite well for us in spite of the heavy loads. And so I think first and foremost is a service. I think the second thing that you can do, and it's just hard, but it's one-on-one. I would call it bespoke service. And I'll translate both those concepts, for a Datto or any vendor into MSPs. It's the same for MSPs to SMBs, right? If you're an MSP and your SMBs are struggling, you don't want to be doing blast emails 30% off our service, right? Or April's free, if you sign up now. I mean, that just doesn't resonate. It actually just feels really off-brand. And, you want to call them up one by one and say, what do you need? What's going on? It's perfectly fine to sell. And in our case, since we have channel partners, sales means that our partner is getting a sale. So we love, forget our revenue. We'll be fine. We love when a partner is calling saying, I need to buy something, because we know that's revenue for them. And they're serving a hospital. They're serving some other frontline. There's a lot of activity still going on. And so I think you have to view it as, I'll do whatever I can for you. And then I gave a little bit of advice that people might think is a little bit tough, which was serve your paying customers best and first. Right? Lawyers have this notion of pro bono, and that means they overcharge you and I a little bit, and 10% of the time they get to go work for nonprofits or anybody they want. And we all have this urge right now to help the local school, help the client who can't pay. And I think there's room to do that, but that comes because you're helping everybody else. And so is this a time when you're going to work nights and work weekends? You bet it is. They're going to remember you for how many hours you put in and how fast you responded. And you're not going to get paid any extra. In fact, you're probably going to get paid less, but you do have to get paid. And I think that is a lasting lesson for me from the internet crash, from the global real estate meltdown. I mean, I had a hood ornament view on those two crashes as a C-level executive. And, when you look back, not everybody made it on the customer side. You will have been glad you put the preponderance of your effort into the paying customers. So I think those are the obligations. And then frankly, the last thing I did was, a little bit prod the industry and kind of said, it's okay to sell. There are opportunities out here. I've seen some 10,000 plus seat deals come across. They're doing hospital chains. They're doing frontline government responders, schools, universities have sent everybody home. What are they doing? They're repainting the dorms and upgrading their networks. Enterprises that have everybody at home are rethinking this. So, in our case, while you had a couple of slow weeks on activation for continuity devices, it's hard to go out and go into a company. That's picked right back up again. It's never been safer to go to a law firm. There's nobody there. The owner lets you in the front door, 6 feet spacing, please. And you go in and you work in the server room and you do all that housekeeping. that you've fallen behind on for the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I did challenge people now, once you're safe, your clients are safe, you stabilize the business, this isn't over. This is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. Start selling. Doesn't mean a hardcore sell. It's not a promotional sale. It's do what we as an industry do best, which is create solutions. It involves innovation. It's RMM, it's SaaS protection, it's UCaaS, it's all the things they need first to get stable. But then it's start to look at the 6-month roadmap. The MSPs that are truly managed service already have that roadmap. They're doing that work, right? So be my partner, be my strategist. I couldn't be more encouraged about the industry's role coming out of this thing as a leader in where SMB tech goes.
Yeah, you just used the key word, I think, and that is strategist. It is okay to sell, but ultimately, as the MSP, you want to listen, but you also want to strategize and call that customer and say, let's sit down and strategize about what your business looks like, what your needs are, et cetera. So I completely agree with you. But building on that point, as we look ahead now, do you think the MSPs themselves and this industry are forever changed by this? Or do we go mostly, like, some people think work from home becomes like for everyone, which I push.
Yeah.
How much change do you think we'll see in the industry that is truly permanent change?
It's a great question, and I'll stick up front. I'm biased by all these previous crises, micro or macro, right? I mean, half the friends I had after 9/11 said, "Oh, I'm never getting on an airplane again. I'm taking the John Madden bus everywhere," right? And okay, that lasted about 8 weeks, right? It turns out airline travel is ridiculously cheap and convenient. So I've heard the same now. We're just all going to work from home. It's over. Commercial real estate's done. I don't buy that for a second. So short term, it has permanently changed the industry. You in as much as you can't see GDP plummet, 20, 25, 30% like you're seeing in these countries and not expect Q2 to be ugly. It's not going to bounce back to normal in Q3. So there are some number of months or quarters where we're changed. MSPs still control, you've heard me say this many times, over 10% of that 1.2 trillion of SMB tech spend, though, right? So suppose the 1.2 plunges to 700 this year, there's still 70 billion up for grabs. So I don't think we're all going to sit around and claim there's not enough, target market. I don't think SMBs are going to contract on their tech spending other than to the degree they're in a vertical. But here's this fun example. Every restaurant closed immediately when the governor in the state says close. Some of them already did takeout and delivery. Those are the winners. Some of them are actually reporting higher numbers than they had before and might just close the office, right, and just go with the Chinese food takeout model because it's often more profitable. But a pub is coming back. They're going to come back, though, knowing how to do takeout and delivery. So the first wave was every single restaurant that wants to be open has reopened as a takeout delivery. Second wave, guess what? Now they're all grocery stores because the wholesale food chain is all set up to deliver to grocery. The governors have all waived all these rules. You can go to my favorite restaurant down the street here and do your kind of produce grocery shopping. They'll give you a 6 of beer and you can get takeout, steaks and other things. So that's not going away now, right? So whatever they cobble together short term is a duct tape solution. An MSP that serves them now goes back in and says, okay, you're going to reopen, but what's it look like in the new normal? Turns out Tim still loves to go to the restaurant, but Mary next door prefers the Grubhub app, and but Grubhub takes a lot of the spread here. Maybe we should go with a different app. There's so much room to rethink now, what they've done short term to go long term. But are we going back to restaurants? I can't imagine that we're not. I think again, if anything, it's whatever path we were on to digital transformation for SMBs, it may bend that up a little bit, but our belief has always been we're only 10, 15% into that.
Right.
A coffee shop's got a Square terminal and bad Wi-Fi. They haven't exactly digitally transformed the whole business. And at the same time, I like sitting in a coffee shop, and I'm willing to pay a premium for that. And so I actually think it's kind of a fun time. I hate to use the word fun in a crisis. Get through the crisis. We have health. We're all worried about families, and I did hear that you had a major impact in the family recently, and I'm sorry to hear that.
We're doing okay. Thank you, though.
I have an 80-plus-year-old mom, 1,500 miles from me. I'm very worried about her every day. I finally convinced her that she had to quarantine, and was an interesting, long, strategic conversation. And so, I'm not ignoring the human implications on the back end of this, though. When you come out of it and you go, what do these businesses look like? It's fascinating. I think, probably we will buy more cars online, but I still have to go to the dealership ultimately. I still have to get it serviced, and it's going to transform how they think about technology. And to me, that's pure opportunity for the industry. And, let's start thinking that through now, as soon as we have our employees safe. It's sort of.
As you think that through, I'm curious, are you hearing similar conversations or vastly different conversations as you speak to country managers in Europe, Australia, Asia, et cetera? Are there similarities in terms of the threads, or is it totally different from region to region?
Yeah, it's different region to region only in as much as where people are in the curve, right? So I think it's safe to say orders are probably better in the South. The states are opening up again. Will that turn out to be the right strategy? That's not the approach I'd take if I was a governor, but it's one strategy, and we'll probably see sales picking up. I'm guessing our sales are fairly poor in New York City still. That's still a few more weeks in the psyche, shall we say. It's a resilient city that's been hit so many times, but you wouldn't start there. So the regional conversations have been more there. You do know that in Europe, and maybe in Asia, more businesses have started the shift to the cloud. But, again, I think you have to talk about all the different layers of hybrid cloud. So a lot of MSPs I see in Europe are basically looking to do desktop, right? We'll procure your laptop, desktop, we'll put O365 and Intuit QuickBooks on there. And then, a systems house or some larger integrator is still maintaining your servers and your legacy applications. And so for me, cloud doesn't just mean O365. It means I literally have no infrastructure and I've outsourced it all. And that's a hybrid world for a long, long time. Asia is willing to go there faster. They just move more quickly. In the US, we're moving more slowly. People still run Windows 2000 in some industries. And it's just a thing. And so that's not bad for MSPs. They just need to figure out how to help lead that transition. There is going to be an amazing lift in MSP revenue for the folks that can help lead people to the cloud. But it's not the same as reselling Dell. It's not the same as reselling O365, right? You got to get your hands dirty. Software applications, lift and shift at a minimum, maybe rewriting some middleware, partnering with some SIs. I think it's a bold new future.
It's funny you should mention that. Just yesterday, I have to apologize because I don't remember the research firm, but I got this piece of research that talked about Azure MSPs and how they have to also be integrators and application consultants. You can't just be a pure MSP. So to your point, you're really going to have to understand a whole boatload of new services and solutions up in the cloud rather than just reselling O3.
You and I have been doing tech for decades. I would, as an expert, that you are, I would defy you to go to Microsoft's website and try to figure out how to buy Azure and tell me how much it costs and tell me what you just bought. Right. It is a journey. It's not an afternoon. It's a journey. It's a journey worth taking if your client wants to go there. Now, when you take the journey and you get your third month's bill, it might be lower than your previous spend, or it might be much higher. And you don't get to know in advance. And so helping your clients on that journey is going to be critical. And just because we're doing this remotely doesn't mean they're going to want to do everything remotely. So I think if there's a permanent lasting effect, it changes the nature of the conversation. It adds the value that MSPs bring. It puts it front and center. And, I'll give you one other perspective. I said on this webinar, I have a lasting memory coming out of the last two big crises. The global financial meltdown was the scariest, right? I mean, Bank of America, Barclays Bank, banks were tipping over. We weren't sure if the government was going to tip over, right? It was a profound economic damage. Internet crash was, super fast. But we all kind of knew, like, okay, we drank the Kool-Aid. We were up here at 100 times something, and everybody's plunging together. It was like, yeah, that was a fun party. 90s. I think coming out of that, though, you had Salesforce.com. You had SaaS software. And I can remember, because I was a chief financial officer at the time, I wasn't going to pay anybody per month, right? You sell me your license in a box. I was fighting to even pay you maintenance at 15%. Okay, so Now all of a sudden, oh yeah, cash is a little tight. Okay, I'm willing to do this month-to-month thing. Let's try it. And of course, it flourished. Then 08, 09 comes along. Coming out of that, everything as a service, right? You don't actually need a taxi. You don't even need a car. Just Uber it. You don't need a hotel. You certainly don't need to rent a villa. You can just Airbnb it. And now we have hundreds and hundreds. So the capital cycle went there. I think it's the dawn of the recurring revenue revolution for all the MSPs that have not fully made that plunge, right? The SMB coming out of this is going to say, I need a lot more tech. You go, great, let me get a $120,000 quote over for the gear. Whoa, we're in a crisis here, man. Okay, could you do $3,000 a month on a managed contract? Yeah, I think I could do that. Okay, well, for $3,000 a month, here's what I could give you. If you got $5,000 a month, here's what I could give you. And you start walking them up that chain. It's the exact way that Salesforce created the platform. It's the exact way that Uber created the platform. And to me, this could spell the beginning of the end of the break fix and the one-time project. And it should give MSPs the courage to go back, into the managed service, into the recurring revenue conversation.
And frankly, I think you'll see the quote unquote recurring project out of that. So the MSPs will stay project involved, but it'll be on a recurring, that strategic meeting conversation you're talking about.
That's right.
And I do see upside here. I want to shift the conversation from the MSPs back to Datto a bit.
Sure.
I did hear, again, we're talking in late April here, but I did hear, this was in early 2020, I was speculating pretty regularly that Datto may be pursuing an IPO sometime soon. And I realize the pandemic has since come along. And again, I'll use the word speculation. It was just some chatter I was hearing from third parties. Any update on sort of either A, your financial status, or B, Datto ever going public? What's your thought there at this point?
Yeah, that's an old parlor game from 2015, I think. I joined in 2017, but it seems to get asked every year. It's not something I'll comment on specifically, other than to say, because employees ask all the time, we're the same Datto as always. I think if you go all the way back, it was Austin and he owned the whole thing, or maybe one of his family members did for the first little bit, right? Usually you get a check. He was right out of school. So there was the interfamily, exchange. Then he's the owner of this thing. He likes to tell the story of how excited he was when he first issued employees stock options, right? And then it was Austin and employees. Then venture capitalists came, and then they left, and private equity came. And we've had this various, different sets of investors. Companies always grown, always been good in that. And I think every one of those sets of investors has brought something interesting and better to the table, and the culture hasn't changed a bit, because each time we've brought on new equity owners, equity investors, we've looked them in the eye and said, this is the franchise. Datto is MSPs. If you invest in this business and try to go direct, if you invest in this business and try to go enterprise or consumer or anything else, if you invest in this business and try to raise price 20% and squeeze the partners, you're going to fail. This is a journey that we're all on together, and it's a singular bet on the channel. And we lead the channel in tech, and we lag the channel in growth, and we grow together, and we're okay with that. It's an enduring marathon, it's an enduring value play. And so all I would tell you there is, we're in, very good financial strength. We've never made any of those sort of investment decisions for anything other than to sort of accelerate growth. And, where one set of owners wanted to sell for their own liquidity reasons, and a different set of owners said, we get it. We know that this is still very, very early innings in terms of the MSP industry. And certainly Vista, our current, private equity investor, understood that, really approached us and said, we love MSPs. We get it. And we think Datto is the right play for us to get exposure to that. And so it's been, it's been a great journey. So that's about as much as I'd say about it at this point. I think you could safely say this is the wrong time in some capital markets to go much further. But those market windows open and close, and we'll always do sort of our examination in that context.
All right, thanks. And I hope you don't mind me asking every time I see you that same question over and over again.
No, it's not offensive. It's a logical question people could ask, and it's something that's hard to comment on in any case, good market or bad. So
yep. Hey, the other thing on a lot of MSPs' minds is DattoCon. As I understand it, I think it's set for early June in Atlanta. Is that still the case? You still going face to face? Might you go digital only? What's the thought process?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's been a little fun, a little drama. DattoCon is scheduled for June 8th to the 10th in the wonderful city of Atlanta. Candidly, Joe, I personally don't see how we can responsibly bring 4,000 people together in one place, given the healthcare crisis. In addition, many of the attendees come from other countries and would actually at this point be barred from entry. So we're in late stage negotiations with the city of Atlanta, our hosts, and the hotels, with an eye toward postponing the event toward a safer time. As you know, U.S. states are taking different sort of approaches here, and I'll let you sort of follow the drama with the Atlanta mayor and the Georgia governor. They have, at some points, I think, opened the theaters and have some view that they're going to have tens of thousands of people in conventions in May. That's not my view. So we're sort of in discussions and have been for a bit here. So what I would pledge is we're hopeful of having an agreement that we can announce in a matter of days. And I would pledge we would never put employees, vendors, partners in any sort of health kind of harm's way. So we're very conservative in that. Datto won't be the first company back to work when there's a return to work sort of a phase. And it would be likewise with our roadshow events and likewise with DattoCon. So it didn't make sense to guarantee it was on 6 weeks, 7 weeks ago, and it didn't make sense to cancel it. It made sense to kind of wait and see. And obviously we'll make everybody whole and make it right, and look forward to to both postponing this and hopefully having the same level of success. And then we've got DattoCon Berlin on for October, and fingers crossed the world sort of gets their arms around that. But it would be the same thing there. We wouldn't host it unless we were highly confident from local health experts and really our own health experts that it was a safe event to do. So.
Got it. Thank you for the background. So, to tie things together, let's bring it back to the MSPs and sort of some closing thoughts, for lack of a better term. Ultimately, what is the takeaway message from Datto to MSPs right now in the current state of the market?
Yeah, from Datto to MSPs, it's on the one hand, long term, brighter than ever. We could not be more bullish. This may cause some people to walk away from riding the MSP horse, so to speak. This may cause some people to say, oh, it's going to be Microsoft that wins it all, or I've heard all kinds of theories, but MSPs are going to lead. The SMB IT trillion plus is still sitting there. It's so early, even in mature markets like, New England or UK, it is just still so early in terms of MSP penetration. It's going to be a little different. I don't think it's going to be any kind of trends, whether it's security, IoT, shift to cloud. Those trends are all the same. I wouldn't, get a head fake and suddenly remake my whole business into a Zoom reseller. Right. If that fits in your portfolio, so be it. I would probably go somewhere else, even though I love Zoom, and go somewhere else, because for MSPs, it's margin. Go find a cheaper solution that you think works just as well. There's a dozen of them. So we'll keep preaching for MSPs. Lead your SMBs, be their advisor, go to get recurring revenue. I just promise you that's going to be more of a thing on the other end of this. And I think it's financeable. So, if you come out less financially stable and coming out of the crisis, banks, venture capital, private equity, they're going to lend into recurring revenue. I've talked about that on the main stage of DattoCon every year for the last couple of years. That's the lasting value, whether you're giving it to your kids, whether you're selling it to somebody who's rolling them up, whether you want to get financial investment, recurring. In the short term, I'm not as doomsday as others. I have seen, more than a couple of vendors out there telling people slash and burn, lay off your staff, go to ground. I think it's frankly been promotional and self-serving. I think, the kind of sub-headline is get the cheapest services you can. And oh, by the way, did you know we're 75% off today? This isn't a promotional sales environment. This is healing. Take care of partners, take care of customers. They'll remember you for how you behaved. And you have to work really hard. So I do think if you don't have an accountant on your staff, get one, right? I mean, your uncle, your cousin, your aunt, study your business. If something has to be jettisoned in cost, or the Friday lunches or the company car, whatever it has to be, you've got to take the pain. It doesn't strike me that it's going to last for years. I think it's a short term in the scheme of things kind of effect. And is that 3 months, 6 months, 9 months? I don't know. But I think it's short term, run your business, serve your paying customers first and foremost. And then, if you've got the room, and it may be weekends, it may be nights, take care of anybody else that you think deserves it. I mean, we're all doing a lot of pro bono work today. For Datto specifically, call us. We have engaged, hundreds and hundreds of partners. You will not see a headline, from us on Datto's investing in the industry, blah, 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 blah. When the dust settles, though, I guarantee it'll be millions, if not tens of millions of dollars that we will have effectively transferred in economic value to partners, because we call them partners and we're working with them individually. Some of the early ones that had hotel kinds of problems, we proactively called them. We said, we know you're hurting. What can we do? How can we help? Can we adjust your invoices a bit, et cetera? But it's not a time to be opportunists. It's not a time to, for people to be calling vendors and trying to, say, hey, haven't you noticed times are tough? I want discounts. It's a time to explain your situation and be a partner, and because the industry can help very broadly. But I would end with, no company can be the bank of its customers, right? Maybe Apple can. I haven't seen them offering many discounts on iPhones. Maybe Cisco can. They'll give you some vendor financing on routers. But, that's a sort of very different kind of place, right? You still have to put your credit card in to get 0365. And so, get paid and deliver over-the-top, exciting, delight service. And sell a bit, but it's a soft sell. Be creative. Be empathetic. To some degree, if I've been on the phone with dozens of MSPs, again, they're shy. All I've said is call your customers and just talk to them. Ask them how they're doing. Ask them about their family, empathize their situation. And it is shocking how many of those calls we've had where a week later the partner buys something. Yeah. And you kind of go, wait a minute. We weren't making a sales call. They just had a need and they called somebody who was listening. So we've done a lot of EQ training for the whole sales team, and told them you're kind of half sales, but you're also half support and just account friend. Yeah, listening ear. Yeah, which is I'm blessed. I inherited a culture where partners are first, and in a way I'm less the leader of the team than a steward of that culture, and it will survive me, and I'll hand the baton on to somebody, and hopefully some many years into the future, and it'll still be the same Datto. And it goes back to your investor comment as well. It's a more sustaining entity in that regard. I don't know if what the right analogy is, American Red Cross, or just somebody where you see the brand, you know what they do, you're not quite sure who leads it, and you're not quite sure how it all works, but it's helpful when there's blood drive. And Datto is like MSP technology in that way. Yeah. Well, Tim, I can't thank you enough for your time today. I appreciate it. And best wishes in the weeks ahead. Well, we appreciate you for staying in touch. I'm sure your job is very different. Can I exit and ask you how your job has changed? You know what? I think my job has been, the number one way my job has changed is to try to get MSPs closer to the money. And I'm not talking about vendor financing. I'm talking about the PPP loans, for instance. We've been driving people to smaller community banks, to other ways to make sure that short-term cash flow, that there is a bridge to tomorrow. So, us, E2E, we've always covered the financial side of this, but ultimately we doubled down. We really knew that we had to get the MSPs closer to the money on E2E, and on our sister site, MSSP Alert. Listen, managed security services, the market is booming, but we want to be responsible. There have been some hiccups here and there in the market, so we're covering that responsibly as well. But thanks. Yeah, it is a shame. Cyber attackers seem to be a winner in this, and you've seen the level of attacks really go up a lot, and they're taking care of a lot of taking advantage of a lot of new increased attack surface while everybody's working from home, maybe not hanging off the VPN. It's that really is a shame. I'm sure you've seen some of our webinars. We agree with you completely. Vendors can't be the bank, but banks can be the bank. The stimulus money is overwhelmingly large. We've actually taken a few full-time employees. Our chief accounting officer, for example, has become a real expert on that. We're obviously not eligible. It's not for our benefit, but we've run webinars. We've got all kinds of digital content for MSPs. They're welcome to call us we'll sort of walk them through all of that right up to the point. I think we even have an application up and running where you can kind of go in and fill out a full application and push the button, and it goes off to the bank. So, that's what I mean by providing the help, right? It's right. I think that's a free RMM for a month is nice, but actually, helping their business and going to try to find them that help is exactly right. People understand the lasting value of MSPs as well. And I do think, unlike '09, which, as I said, I thought was scarier from a professional and economic perspective, did not have this healthcare overlay where we're all freaking out about our families and friends and, climbing the walls of our home offices. Did not have that, but it was scarier financially. This time around, there's a lot of dry powder, right? There's a lot of dry powder. So at the same time you're servicing and selling with your end users, don't be shy about having those conversations. Angel investors, venture investors, banks, as you said, the community banks, they live for this. I've talked to my best friend's a community banker, and forgiving a lot of interest, a lot of payments, a lot of loans, 3, 6, 9 months. They've got the Fed window open and behind them, and can do a lot of creative things. So yeah, it's a great point to exit on, and we wish everybody well, and stay in touch. Datto always answer the phone, and I'm still Tim at Datto.com. So we look forward to hearing from more partners.
All right. I apologize in advance for all the emails I always send. Take care.
Be well, Joan. Thanks for having me today.